Hi guys, my name is Samuel and I am a health coach. I specialize in long-term health conditions, especially focusing on diabetes within the community. I work as a health coach for our local PCN within Lambeth, and what I do is I support individuals in the community living with diabetes to understand the condition and also to understand how they can take control of their health through managing what they eat, but more importantly, being more physically active and using exercise as a means to help their body to reduce their blood sugar levels, blood pressure, strengthen their overall their body, and also to improve their mental health.
Whereas if you had been proactive a few years back, or when you identified, oh, I'm getting up to go to the toilet a bit too often, and actually got it checked, then they would have saw it earlier and addressed it earlier. So it's just a willingness to get your health checked. For example, I started a program with my PCN at the start of January. So PCN is a primary care network. And I sent out an invitation to all our diabetic patients within the community. And at the end of it, within my group of 60, I had about 3 black men.
Only 3 black men.
Is there only 3 black men?
3 black men?
No. Is there only 3 black men?
No. This is
the ones I'm making. Yeah, I understand the point you're making. Yeah.
This is the thing, right? So I work in Lambeth. As we know, Lambeth has a large black community. And specifically, the project that I was working on was aimed at supporting people within the community, especially the black, Asian, and other ethnic minorities that don't necessarily have a good relationship with healthcare, as we know, right? So, as I said, 3 black men, a lot more women, a lot more black women, a lot more women in general of other ethnicities. However, I only received 3 black men, or only 3 black men actually took up the opportunity to come and learn about diabetes and do what they need to do to manage their health appropriately. So the question is why? Black community, and more so within men and our relationship with health and healthcare. And understanding.
So before going further, I might make sure I'm hearing you correctly. You're saying it affects the black men more so rather than the black race. Than the women, there's a distinction between the two. Is that what you're saying?
No, so what I'm saying is there's a distinction between the man and the woman, black man and woman, as to their approach or their proactiveness to dealing with their health.
Okay.
Right? So diabetes type 2 in general can go about 10 years before it's diagnosed. Bad, right? So we see the trend that women are more proactive in engaging with healthcare. Standard. Any program we do, women take it up just like that. And then when we look at it more closely in terms of ethnicity, black women tend to uptake the services a lot more than the black men. So the pattern still remains, however you look at it.
That men just don't.
They just don't. And so the question is why?
Can I just say, you may say that, but also the same take-up also applies in most of the Caribbean countries as well.
You mean in the Caribbean? In the Caribbean itself, black country, one of my black country, they're not doing it there.
Women are more likely to take up on their health than the men.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's interesting.
It's an education piece then.
Education?
Men have a different perception of getting checked. That's the problem. Because if this is consistent here and in the Caribbean, then
America.
If it's consistent, then it's an education piece. Maybe, as I said, we need to do the Simpson thing.
What about if it has something to do to the perception?
5 times, yeah? So we see that actually your weight contributes the most. When we look at children, so children with type 2 diabetes, 98% of them are overweight or obese. So they haven't lived long enough for age to now be the contributing factor, right? Or for other health conditions or other aspects of lifestyle to contribute. We see that in children who develop type 2 diabetes, 98% of them are overweight or obese. So that goes to show the impact of your weight on your health in general. As we get older, age is a risk factor. We know that. It doesn't 100% determine that you're going to get type 2 diabetes, but it is a factor, right? You've lived long enough, just general wear and tear, and depending on your diet, what types of foods you consume, the amount, the timings is very important. So
what do you mean the timings?
Timing, so do you eat late at night?
No.
Yeah, so that plays a role. A lot of people do. And sometimes it's not their fault per se. Maybe they do night shift. Maybe they get home late, they got to deal with other stuff, whatever it might be. But it has a detrimental effect on the body. When we talk about diet, when we talk about food, we always look at carbohydrates. Carbohydrates isn't necessarily the problem. Because as I mentioned, carbohydrates have been around as long as I know, right? Bananas has been around, yam has been around. They're not genetically modified foods. They've always been there. So the problem is our relationship with food, the calories that we're taking in, and the calories we are expending, so our movement, that has significantly changed in modern times because everything now is designed to make life easier.
Automation.
To remove all the need for physical activity to exert yourself. And that's a big problem. If you want to go from A to B, you can do so by car, by bus, by electric bike, electric scooter,
elevator,
you name it,
escalator,
you name it. Yeah, you can literally go from here to London Bridge and probably do no more than 500 steps, which back in the days that would have been impossible. Right? You would have to physically move your body to get from A to B. And so we are moving less and we're consuming more food. But on top of that, there's other lifestyle factors that we also need to include when we talk about this, especially within our community. Stress plays a massive role, right? Stress plays a massive role. And although everyone in the world, anyone in society, wherever they are, will experience a level of stress, we know that in the lower percentage of society in terms of their socioeconomic status, stress is a little bit more detrimental to them. It's experienced a bit more often. And there's a level of vulnerability because if, for example, finances is something that's contributing to your stress levels, you might be having to work a long-ass shift every single day to provide for your family, and you don't have the option, of rest days. You don't have the option of having a break when you need to.
Make a quick sample, sounds like.
Or the option of seeing a GP.
Or the option of seeing a GP at the time that's convenient for you, isn't it? Right? So, because of the requirements that you have, it makes it really, really hard for you to look after yourself. So that's stress. It's a contribution factor. And in its many ways. So stress can be environmental, so where you live, right? Do you live in a bad neighborhood or a dangerous neighborhood? Do you live in a place where there isn't any facilities for you to go for walks, to exercise? In an area where there isn't natural foods or shops that sell natural foods? Is it all processed foods? Do you live in an area where the GPs, the surgeries are not helpful? They don't have programs to support you and your specific community to deal with your specific foods and your challenges. So that's environmental stress that can impact. Then you have physical stress, right? So physical stress placed on your body. So again, in your environment, is there always noise? We're used to it, right? A lot of us live near the roads, etc., and there's always noise in the background. In London, there's always noise. And yes, we're used to it now. It's just part of life. Your brain kind of shuts it off. But all that stimulus consistently places the body under a level of stress. You only realize that when you go out to Kent somewhere, right? You go on a retreat or something in the woods and your ears are ringing because it's so quiet. Not because it's noisy, but because it's so quiet,
Deafening silence.
a deafening silence,
That's where the
right?
term comes from.
And so that goes to show you that in your day-to-day, your body's experiencing so much physical stimulus, stress, because it has to deal with it. Then you have emotional. What is the relationship with your family, with your partner, with your kids, with your work colleagues, right? That has an impact as well. That can put you under stress. So there are many different aspects that can contribute to stress, and stress itself causes your blood sugar levels to increase. So it's not only consuming carbohydrates or not consuming the right types of food or beneficial types of food, but there's also the stress that you might be experiencing just because of life in itself. This is it.
Yeah.
So stress is a major risk factor, especially in today's society. We're all stressed for one reason or another, and stress, we know, triggers the fight or flight response. So when the fight or flight response is triggered, adrenaline is released, cortisol is released, and these hormones are released to put your body in the best state possible for you to run, for you to fight. Ultimately, it's to save your life. Yeah. So when those hormones are released, your liver will produce more glucose so that your muscles can use the glucose to fight or run. Your heart rate increases. Why? Because your heart needs to pump the blood round so that the muscles can receive the glucose, the oxygen, and the nutrients they need for you to fight or run. Your blood pressure also increases, simply because your blood vessels are constricted to redirect the blood to the organs that it needs in order for you to run or fight. In that state, any form of physical activity causes around 86% of your blood to divert to your muscles when you do some form of physical activity, right? So stress triggers your liver, or stress causes the fight or flight response, which releases adrenaline and cortisol. These hormones are designed to prime the body for it to do some sort of physical activity, either to run or to fight, to take you into a safe place, take you away from danger. How this contributes to diabetes is that in today's age, our stress doesn't require a fight or flight. Financial stress doesn't require a fight. Who are you going to fight? Who are you going to run from? There's nowhere you can go. If you have issues in your housing, the housing association isn't listening, it stresses you out. There's a leak, the water's not working, this, that, and the other. It puts you under stress. Well, who are you going to fight? And how are you going to run? Right? There's stress at work, the stress with your partner. It puts you in the same fight or flight. It produces the same hormones. It causes the same elevation in your blood sugar levels, but there's no outlet. And so you're sitting there, constantly stressed, and your liver's just chucking out more glucose. And on top of that, if you don't manage your stress properly, what are you going to do? You're going to drink more. You're going to eat more. And so that might contribute even more so to your blood sugar levels. Yeah? So stress is one of the factors that a lot of people don't include or don't consider when they think about their health. In addition to increasing your blood sugar and the other hormones that are produced, it also causes your immune system to be compromised a little bit, which can also contribute to what we call inflammation around the body. So if you have other health conditions, high blood pressure, for example, it's going to make that worse as well. Then the high blood pressure has an impact on your blood vessels, which also reduce the ability for you to transfer blood around the body, which then is going to have other effects as well. So it might have an effect on your organs, it might have an effect on your pancreas even more so. And as I mentioned, if you're not making the right decisions to deal with the stress, if you're just eating more, if you're drinking more, if you're smoking more, or whatever it is, you compound the effect of the fight or flight response. Does that make sense? So in any case, one of the most effective ways to manage your stress or deal with your stress, knowing that stress is the fight or flight response, my body is primed to move, you need to go and move. Go and do something. Go for a walk, go to the gym, go for a run. You need to use up the energy that your body is producing. If you don't, your blood sugar stays elevated longer than it needs to. And that's where it starts to cause damage within the blood vessels in the body. And that's where it contributes to your diabetes a lot more so. So there's two ways your body can produce glucose, can interact with glucose. Firstly, you can ingest glucose from carbohydrates, rice, pasta, yam, plantain, whatever it is, right? Carbohydrates is broken down and it releases glucose. But your body doesn't need to take glucose from the outside because it can produce its own. Your liver produces its own glucose. So sometimes your liver can produce a little bit too much glucose. And so that contributes to your overall level of elevated blood sugar. So what metformin does is it helps to reduce how much glucose your liver is actually producing, so that it puts less stress on your pancreas to produce insulin to deal with it. Does that make sense? And it also has an effect on how your body absorbs glucose when you consume carbohydrates from the intestines. And lastly, it suppresses your appetite a little bit so that you don't eat as much. As an adult, there's other factors involved. Being overweight, how long you've been living with stress, genetic factors at play, age is at play as well, other health conditions that you might have, and the medication that you're taking as well is at play. So a little bit more complex. But we see that weight plays the biggest role. So if you lose weight, if for you specifically, your weight is a major contributing factor and you lose that weight, it is very likely that you will see a significant drop in your blood sugar levels. If that happens, if you manage to achieve that, that will trigger your nurse or doctor to have a medication review, because your weight is one of the factors that they take into account when they're prescribing you a medication and the dose they give you in the first place. So for some people, the weight loss can be so significant and have such a massive impact on their HbA1c, so their blood sugar, that the medication they're taking is no longer useful in achieving that, because the weight loss has done it already. Does that make sense? That is the rule, but there are some people who the weight has no effect. Digest foods, the typical side effects are going to be like sometimes stomach pain, a bit of nausea, potentially cramping a little bit, unintentional weight loss, because remember it has an effect on your appetite, so you're going to lose weight. But those are the usual side effects. And we also see that the long-term use of metformin, significantly long-term use of metformin, also like your dosage as well, the way how the body metabolizes the medication can also cause to a depletion of your vitamin B12, and so in the long term that can have its own complications down the line as well. But what do you mean by significant? So there's different dosages that they can give you for the metformin, isn't it? So initially they can give you about 500 milligrams, or it can go up to 3,000. So you'll be taking 2 tablets, morning, lunch, evening. 3,000? So that'll be 3,000, because each tablet is 500. So if you're taking 2, that's 1,000 per meal. So that's the maximum they can give you. And if that's not working, so if you're someone who says, okay, I'm taking the medication, I'm not really going to change my diet too much, maybe I'm not in a position to do enough physical activity, eventually that dosage isn't going to work. And so that's when combination therapy is introduced. So they'll give you the metformin plus something else to help keep your blood sugars in check. So we've had a look at two factors. Being overweight is one, and one thing I want to say specifically about being overweight, especially as men, is that for us the weight tends to go around the stomach a lot more. Is your weight.
Water retention.
But when we look at it in regards to health, and in regards to diabetes specifically, what we're looking at is the excess fat. And the excess fat around the stomach is what causes the problems. But unfortunately for men, we're genetically predisposed, we're designed to have the fat around the stomach more than anywhere else. But unfortunately, that's where the problem arises, because that's where all our organs are. And what we've seen is that actually the fat around the stomach interacts with your organs a little bit different. So it's very important to make sure, to the best of our ability, to keep our stomach as trim as possible.
I hate you. Yes, you.
Have you not finished that?
So specifically the weight, but the weight around the stomach, we've said stress. We know that ethnicity plays a role. Family history also plays a role. So if diabetes runs through the family, even if it's not directly, even if it wasn't your grandma or whatever, but if you can trace back and see that actually, okay, 2 generations back, this person had type 2 diabetes, whatever, if it's within your family, then there's a risk of you also developing it. But what we do see, if your parent has it, and if your parent has it, you're at a higher risk of developing it. Not simply because they have it. Yes, there's a gene element, but I always say that genetic loads the gun, but lifestyle fires it. So even though your parents may have it, more importantly is the behavior you learn from your parents, right? So when I was growing up, I used to have adult-sized portions of food. Just because I was so active, I'd be running around outside all day, literally running around outside all day, football for hours, playing run-outs, whatever. So when I get home, I'm hungry. And I used to be given an adult-sized portion of food, whether it be fufu, whether it be yam, whatever it might be. And I used to just wolf it down like it was nothing. As an adult now, if my mindset didn't change, well, before it changed, I'm thinking, I'm bigger now. So the food I was eating then was for a kid, obviously. Now I'm bigger, I should be able to have more. Not knowing that actually, the only reason why I got away with that is because of the activity I was doing. And as an adult, unless you are intentional about keeping up your activity, doing things that exert the body, that put strain on the muscles, that require you to use up a lot more energy, you cannot consume food in the same way. And that's something that I've seen in my experience throughout the generation. So we need to understand that as you age, different aspects of your life or different ages in your life need to be different. So when I'm young, I'm running around all the time, I never get tired, I can eat as much as I want, I can eat as much sweets as I want, it doesn't even matter. I can go through a whole pack of Haribos and you won't even see, I still stay slim, 6-pack, everything. As an adult, I'm not running around as much. I've got other things that are contributing, so I'm a bit more stressed. I've got responsibilities now. I don't have as much time to myself, right? So now I'm less active, more stress, got more responsibilities. I don't potentially control what I can eat if I've got a family and I have to eat when they eat. You're a bit picky, this, that, and the other. There's other factors that are now can potentially have a negative effect on my health. When you get older, even still, your body's still changing. You start to lose your muscles. Therefore, you have less room to make errors with your diet per se.
You're scaring me.
That's good.
Yeah, but you're very active anyway.
Right? You have less room to make errors. So because you're losing your muscles a lot more, and the muscles are the primary organs that use up your sugar, right? When you exercise, remember, when you exercise, 86% of your blood diverts to your muscles. So they're able to deal with the sugars very effectively if you exercise. When you're not exercising, only 20%. All right?
It's a massive leap.
Massive difference, right? So when you get older, you're losing your muscles, therefore you're losing the organ that engulfs the sugar. So that means you're gonna have to, something's gonna have to change. It's either you're gonna have to work out a lot more and try and maintain the muscles, or you're gonna have to change your food a lot more, change your diet, change the amount of carbohydrates you're consuming, so that it can balance with your body composition as it is at your age. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And as you get older, technically you don't want to move it as much, isn't it? You can't lift as much weight, you can't run as fast, you can't...
Flinging the slippers at the children.
This is it, right? Rather than chasing them, you're letting the slippers do the chasing. So your functional ability changes, and we understand that, we go through that. But what we don't understand, or what we're not mindful of, is that your eating behavior also has to change. It also has to adapt to your age. All right, so age is another factor. So we've had a look at weight, ethnicity, age, stress, family history, and the last one is medication.
I want to be a white man.
Oh! Was unavoidable because of other health conditions they have. So we see that if you have...
So I'm going to, typical example, guys, is when a woman's pregnant, she sometimes get diabetes.
My wife gets diabetes when she's pregnant.
That's just a typical example, but there are more you're going to explain. But I was just saying,
So
I like to declare I've never been pregnant.
Gestational diabetes is common among black women, actually. But I'm just saying an example to kind of get ahead understanding that it can affect you differently.
This is it. So gestational diabetes in women. So what happens is so there's two stages where we are more significantly insulin resistant, right? So that was a word that we mentioned right at the start. Puberty and pregnancy, right? Puberty and pregnancy. So in puberty, this is where we see diabetes is diagnosed in the younger children, right? Especially around that time, especially around puberty. For women, when they're pregnant, their body is more resistant to insulin. And if their body is not able to compensate for it, that's when they are diagnosed with gestational diabetes. It doesn't happen to all women, because some women, their body is able to compensate, but for others, it's not able to. And for them, we see that there are some factors that have an impact. So their weight before and during their pregnancy, their stress levels, their diet, family history. Same risk factors apply to them. Having high blood pressure can also contribute and increase your risk of type 2 diabetes. Pancreatogenic diabetes is damage to your pancreas due to an illness, condition, or surgery. So for some people, maybe you go hiking, you slip, you fall, you hit something, you fall into a rock, you fall into a tree, whatever it might be, and there is damage to your stomach area. If that damage impacts your pancreas, it can be so damaging that actually it has an effect on your pancreas' ability to produce insulin. And that could be another route that leads to type 2 diabetes, right? Pancreatitis, or inflammation of your pancreas. That can occur whether or not you consume carbohydrates. It can be due to an autoimmune, it can be due to a condition, it can be due to an infection, a virus, but it can be something that you had no control over. But unfortunately, it causes your pancreas to become inflamed. And in the short term, it can be dealt with. It's not a problem. So that's what we call acute pancreatitis. But if it is chronic, if it sticks around for a long time, then that can cause significant damage to your pancreas and therefore lead to
high level glucose in the blood.
This is it, because it affects the ability to produce insulin yet again. So there are other ways to develop what we call type 2 diabetes. and it's not all necessarily your fault. So health conditions and some medications. Steroids, for example. So if you have arthritis, or rheumatoid arthritis to be specific, if you have joint pains that require steroid injections, if you go through chemotherapy, whatever it might be, if you have to be on a long course of steroids, what steroids do is it increases how much glucose your body produces. So again, it puts you in a heightened state of
stress.
Yeah. So it produces more insulin. Sorry, it produces more glucose.
What about asthma?
Asthma, if you're taking what's it, salbutamol is it called?
Yeah.
The blue and the brown.
The blue and the brown.
Salbutamol.
Yeah. So the medication can increase your risk. It's not going to 100% determine whether you're going to get it, but it potentially can over a long period of time. So that's the last factor.
Sorry, before you go there, what about long-term painkillers?
Which ones?
Like tramadol, Noxaparin, because I've read that those kind of just one of the side effects is that it maintains or it retains weight. Because like I'm on that for the last few years, and I've seen my weight. Also, as much as I'm training, I'm seeing that my weight is increasing, and I'm finding it harder to manage my weight. And I was trying to figure out what's been going on for the last few years. And the only thing I can see was the change was the medication. But when I look it up, I did a free research, is saying that these medication can actually affect handling the weight. Yeah.
So specifically, I'm not aware that those types of medication can have a direct impact on your risk of developing type 2 diabetes. However, as you've mentioned, if it is causing you to retain weight, and we know that weight is a contributing factor to diabetes, then indirectly it can contribute. But you're doing the right thing in terms of being as physically active as possible to dampen the effects of the medication and making you hold on to that weight. So that's very important. And as I said, remember the location of the weight is more significant than the overall weight itself. So for some individuals, arms are slim, legs are slim, stomach says something else, right? And for others, arms are big, legs are big, but in proportion to their stomach, it's not really out like that. So you would look at that person and think, right, because overall you look bigger, your risk would be higher. It's not necessarily the case. It's how much weight, how much fat is packed around the stomach. And if we look at it in more detail, it's not only the weight that's packed around the stomach, but actually there's two different types. Is the weight that sits under your skin, or the weight that sits around your organs.
And the names are
visceral fat and subcutaneous fat.
Oh, your love handles.
So the love handles is not the problem. So the subcutaneous is the one under the skin. That's right. So the visceral is the problem.
Around the organs.
That's the one that sits around the organs. Yeah. And without going into too much detail, the problem with that is the fat that sits around the organs. They release what we call cytokines. They release chemicals that in large amounts interfere with how the organs operate. So if there's too much fat around the organs itself, then there's too much of those harmful chemicals, which also cause low-grade inflammation around the body, which affects other organs. But more specifically, around the stomach, if there's too much fat around the organs, they have an effect on how the organs operate.
In a detrimental way.
In a detrimental way. As well as squeezing them up together, you know, taking up the space that the organs should ideally be sitting there freely without any additional adding. That's it.
The question is, if there's one thing these guys can take away today, and I will have you come back another time, because I'm a bit embarrassed that there's not many people here, because I think what you said, because I think what you say, it feeds back in the thing that what you knowing about your health is so important, and I'm surprised that not many guys are here today. But what would you be your takeaway for these guys to take away today? What
take-home message? Apart from, so after today, everyone's going to be proactive with their health. It goes without saying.
Yes.
Yeah, that one I don't even have to.
Excuse my language. You scared the shit out of me. I'm telling you that.
Right, that should go without saying. Just being proactive with your health is very important. And when it comes to health conditions, you know, the leading health conditions that are affecting the world and our community nowadays: diabetes, being overweight, high blood pressure, cholesterol levels, so your blood profile, stress, we can say, or mental health, which stress falls in, is a condition in itself. One of the most impactful ways to preserve your health is to be as physically active as possible. More specifically, to engage in a significant amount of resistance training. And the reason why I say that is because, from experience, the program that I've been delivering with the PCN, there was one session we done on nutrition, just one session. And that's because everyone knows about nutrition already, right? I don't need to go over the same things. That you know what carbs are, you know what portions are, you know when something's too much on your plate, you know what's sensible to eat, you know what's processed.
Common sense is not common. Let's not put that on the table there, but go on.
Simply because the majority of patients have experienced those types of programs before. Right? They've been on diabetes programs or weight management programs, or they've seen like the healthy eating plate, etc. So they have an idea of how to portion their foods. Whether they do it or not, whether they think that's acceptable for them or not, is a whole different story. But the knowledge is there. What is not there within our community is the physical activity, is the exercise, and specifically resistance training. So do your best every single day, especially as you age, to do resistance training.
And you don't need the gym.
You don't need a gym. Body weight, so you can use body weight. So press ups, for example.
You guys and your damn press ups again. Just come back again.
Squats. Yeah, squats. You can do a plank, you can do sit-ups, you can do pull-ups, whatever it might be. You can just go to the park and do those types of exercises. Yeah, there's a whole outdoor gym just here. You can get yourself some resistance bands, which you can pick up from Amazon or Decathlon.
And they're cheap.
Right?
Yeah,
very cheap, very accessible, and you can use that at home, you can use that at the park to add some more resistance to your workout. If you can go to the gym as well. But whatever avenue you want to follow, you need to do resistance training. Remember the numbers. When you move the body, when you do exercise, 86% of your blood diverts to your muscles. Straight to your muscles. So if your body is struggling to lower your blood sugar levels, it's not going to struggle because all your sugar is going to your muscles. If you're struggling with high blood pressure, just by doing exercise, just by doing resistance training, helps to lower your blood pressure. If you have weight around the stomach, just by working your muscles, your back, your legs, your arms, it absorbs a lot of glucose. And so what that's going to do is it's going to train your body to not only keep your blood sugar levels low, but it's also going to train your body to start tapping into the fat, the excess fat, for energy to use during your exercise. So once you combine that with sensible eating the right portions for your age, for your physical activity, you're not eating too late in the evening, and you listen to your body, you start to actually follow your body clock, then you start to get the balance between energy in versus the energy out. So that would be the main thing that I would say take from me today, is in order to keep yourself healthy, strong, functional, and independent, take time to do resistance training regularly. The government says do it 2 days a week, but realistically, do it 5 days a week.
Okay.
Yeah? Does that make sense?
Yep.
30 minutes of resistance training can be enough, as long as you do it every single day. And if you do that, you'll see the results.